Hello, today we're going to look at the Middle Passage. We're going to look at the Enlightenment and the Great Awakening. Tomorrow, as you can see at the title, French and Indian War, oh my. So it's the Middle Passage, Enlightenment and French and Indian War, oh my. Tomorrow, I'm going to have you finish up looking at the posters and presentation of the French and Indian War, and then you'll have notes over that tomorrow. But let's go ahead and get started with looking at our Middle Passage. Again, as a reminder, as always, if you don't have your notes out, go ahead and pause now so you can get out your notebook. Make sure it's that 3-subject notebook. In your 3-subject notebook, also make sure that you are in the first subject, the first section, which is where we do our notes. If you're typing your notes, that's totally fine. Here we go. Feel free to pause as you need to write stuff. All right, our first thing, totally not depressing at all, the Middle Passage. I put an MP up here at the top because I'm going to say Middle Passage again, and you could just abbreviate it as MP, or you could even draw an arrow up to your title. So as we saw on those docs I guess 2 weeks ago now, we were looking at how they are shipping slaves across the Middle Passage. So along the triangular trade, traders are going to trade slaves in Africa for rum. That's going to be one of the biggest things they'll trade for slaves is rum. And the slaves were then sold for molasses in the Caribbean or in the 13 colonies. As we saw in the crash course last week, the vast majority of African slaves are actually going to end up in the Caribbean or South America, whereas a smallest percentage are going to go to the 13 colonies. But overall, millions of Africans, as we learned in that primary resource, are going to come across through the Middle Passage MP. And slave traders fit as many slaves as possible on their boats. So they crammed them in as if they were Amazon cargo, trying to get as many as they can squeezed in. Pause it here. I'm going to move to the next slide. Which leads us to the Great Awakening and the Enlightenment. These are two major impacts, especially on the 13 colonies. The first one being the Great Awakening, which was a big religious movement. And the reason we're going to start seeing it happening is the number of people, firstly, are going to start booming in the colonies. The amount of people who live there is growing. And also, we're going to see religious preachers moving around the colonies, trying to kind of spread the word of Christianity more. Now, not that people weren't religious anymore, because we saw the Puritans, we also saw the Quakers, we saw Maryland was made for Catholics, so religion was a big part of the founding of the colonies. However, when you first start in a new colony, there aren't churches automatically already there for you, so places of worship are still need to be built, established, created. So part of the problem too is people who live out maybe in the rural parts are trying to survive. They're building homes, they're trying to survive. So religion, not that it's not important and they necessarily get rid of it, but it's not a thing that is massive. When you are starving and potentially dying and there's not a church to go to, you can't go to church on like Sunday, for example. So you're seeing this Great Awakening happen though, where people are waking up to their religion again. It's reviving. There's now places to go worship. So many people are going to experience a Great Awakening, religiously speaking. They're going to be woke. Also, as part of this, you're going to start seeing the beginnings of changing colonial religiously, politically, and it's going to have a huge impact on social lives. And a couple guys who were the most influential around this time period was Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield. Both of these guys were preachers who traveled around, and they specifically are kind of preaching about sins and how to avoid hell and how to get to heaven. So they're inspiring people to do what is right. But also, while they go to preach around the colonies in some major cities, a lot of people are gathering from within the cities and from outside of the cities. You're seeing people from different colonies going up to maybe New York or down to the south. They go see one of these guys, and that's going to inspire groups of people in some major ways. So first one, who is being inspired? Great question. The who is going to be women are one big group. Second group, minorities. So people who aren't white, for example, maybe freed Black Americans, or maybe like Swedish, or people who aren't English descent. And of course, the poor. So the poor always exist through all time. There's a biggest chunk is the poor. So the poor people are also inspired. And how or why are they inspired? Great question. I'm glad you asked. Well, ideas are going to be shared between colonies. That's one big thing. This has never really happened before because people are trying to survive or they're just building a city. So now people can travel and see others and hear what other colonies are doing. For example, maybe you live in Georgia where the governor is appointed by the king, and you learn that in New England they do these things called town hall meetings where they get to vote on stuff. So you can share those kind of ideas. The other thing, because when we talk about the Bible, when you talk about Christianity, it preaches, especially this gentleman preached a lot about all of us being equal in God's eyes. God doesn't really care about your race or your gender. God views everyone equally. So that's going to inspire these groups of people as well. And the biggest thing we're going to see is the biggest impact, democracy, the idea of voting and having a voice. More and more people are going to learn about that because they may be traveling to places which have more legislative type buildings and bodies. So you're seeing these are huge ways in which people are inspired. You might want to draw a box around this and highlight it. It might be very important later, by the way. You can pause here if you're still writing. Which takes us to the Enlightenment. And in the Enlightenment, we're going to see gentlemen like Sir Isaac Newton and John Locke really go on to inspire our citizens here in the colonies. And the biggest ways they're going to do that is, firstly, these two gentlemen and many other philosophers and scientists are going to start examining and re-examining our world. How does it work? Scientists are going to question laws of nature and the universe. 8th grade right now are actually learning some of the principles Sir Isaac Newton discovered, which were the laws of like gravity, for example. So like, why do objects, whether it's a bowling ball or a pencil, drop at the same rate? They do, trust me, it's crazy. And this is the beginning of the scientific revolution. Now, what was that? It was the spread of logic and reason. So that is the way people think and process things, is through logic and reason. So instead of just saying, that's stupid, they come up with an argument that is logical with a list of reasons and examples as to why something is not very smart, for example. There's also going to be a lot of philosophers like John Locke who are inspired during this era to question laws and kings and why do we have kings if we can elect ourselves and become educated. So philosophers are going to write theories based off of things from the Bible, from religion, and also from thoughts they're putting together. And the biggest thing we're going to see in this era is the ideas of people having natural God-given rights. For a long time, everyone's been told that kings and queens are in power because God has blessed them with that. Everyone else is going to start questioning, well, what's blessings that we have? So they're going to start making arguments that we also have rights given to us by God. And the current example of what we'll start seeing beginning of the American Revolution is this idea of equality and liberty starting to be planted in the minds of people such as Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Samuel Adams. It goes on and on. Alexander Hamilton, of course. These type of principles and thoughts are going to be starting to grow more and more. All right. Now, that is where I'm going to put in a stop for today. And of course, this picture is one of my favorites because it's from a classic epic rap battles that is fantastic. So I'm going to leave you with a little snippet of that as I go. And I will catch you tomorrow. I'll speak at you some more on finishing up some more of these things where we're going to look at the beginning and the end of the French and Indian War. Have a great rest of your Monday. I will catch you tomorrow. Take it easy. Bye.
Bill, nah. Listen. Isaac Newton! Begin!
Of all the scientific minds in history, they put Beaker and a bow tie up against me. I'm a master. I discovered gravity. I dropped rhymes like they're falling from an apple tree. You're no match for me. You got a batch degree. I got a unit of force named after me. You want a battle, guy? That's a crazy notion. When I start flowing, I stay in motion. Where's Paul? Did you catch that? Or did it go too fast to detect? Perhaps it'd be better if I added in a bleep or a bloop or another wacky sound effect. I was born on Christmas. I'm God's gift. I unlocked the stars that you're dancing with. You waste time debating creationists while I create the science you explain to kids.
Yes, it's true. What I used to do was teach kids science on my PBS show, but now I do what I gotta do to make sure scientific thought can grow. And I'm still in my prime, hitting my stride. What'd you do with the back half of your line? You freaked out, started counting, going to the bank, and you sure didn't have no wife. Oh, you wrote the book on gravity, but you couldn't attract nobody. Your work on orbits was exemplary, but your circle of friends was shoddy. Oh, you don't wanna mess with the guy Bill Nye. I rap sharp like a needle in your arm. I'll stick to drinking that mercury, cause I hypothesize that you're about to get beat.
Well, I conclude that your methods are the whack. You wouldn't even pass in one of my classes. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, except for when we both start rapping. I accelerated the minds of mankind to a higher plane of understanding, and I can't calculate the weight and the size and the shape of the shadow of the mind you're standing in. And I will leave you with a page from a book I wrote at half your age to rebut. The integral CY from 0 to 1/6 of titles like a base E or the square root of 3 times the 64 power of 1.
Why don't you pick on the brain your own size? We got a bad over here. Plus I got your back. Nah, astrophysics black guy. Hating planetary fly. By the way, the answer to your little calculation is I. As in I put the swag back in science while Isaac Newton was lying and sticking daggers in Leibniz and hiding up inside his attic on some Harry Potter business. The universe is infinite, but this battle